Howdy. In today's video, I wanted to share a little tool I've been working on. It is a tool designed for digitally making bobbin lace patterns, and it is especially designed for making torchon bobbin lace patterns. Um, some of the benefits of using a digital tool like this, and the reason why I made this tool is that you're able to print out many different copies of your pattern. So if you don't want to punch out a pattern card like you traditionally would, and if you wanted to just test something out real quick, you can pin directly onto your pillow through your pattern, the printed out piece of paper, without worrying about ruining your only copy of the pattern. You can also print out many different sizes. So if it turns out that you want to change the size of your pattern because it doesn't fit the thickness of your thread, then you can do that. It's also much faster to create a pattern. It's much faster to create a pattern because you have editing tools like undo, copy and paste, and transformations. And finally, it's easier to edit patterns that are already published. So, for example, in the future, if I want to publish some torchon lace patterns on on my website, which I might do, I'll provide the data necessary for you to import it into this tool and make changes for yourself. So playing in the background right now is a time lapse where you can see it in action. This footage was just when I was testing it, so not all of the features were implemented at the time, but I hope it gives you an idea of what you can do with it. Um, so if you just wanted to see how to use all of the features, feel free to skip ahead to that part of the video. In the meantime, I just wanted to give a quick little disclaimer. This is a small project that I've kind of just thrown together, so you're pretty likely to encounter some bugs. In my personal testing, I fixed all of the bugs that I've been able to find. So you might not run into any problems, but I definitely do not have the resources to really guarantee a 100% robust product. That being said, I will definitely continue updating and improving the app. So if you have any bug reports or feature requests that you want to see implemented, just let me know. Or even if you just want to leave a little comment, I'd love to see that. Yeah, so you can go ahead and just leave a comment in this video or send me an email if you want to do that. I'll put that in the description. And also in the description will be a link to the actual tool itself, as well as to a blog post that I've made that goes into detail about how to use this tool in case you want, in case you prefer text format. And so yeah, that's about it for the introduction. So to whoever is watching out there, thank you for checking this out, and I hope you find it useful. So when you first enter the site, you'll be greeted with a canvas that has a grid on it and a floating toolbar on the right. On this toolbar, you can hover over and see all of the different all of the different names for the options, as well as any shortcuts. So starting with navigation, we have our pan tool. If we enter that mode, we can click and drag on the canvas to move around. Also, if we're somewhere else, you see we can hold Alt or Option, and we'll toggle that mode. So we can, if we're doing something else, we can quickly switch modes and move around. We can also zoom in and out with the scroll wheel. So yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and get started by plotting some objects on the canvas. We'll go into draw mode, and we can see there's three options: point, line, and freehand drawing. So for point mode, we just click on the canvas and a point appears. So this is primarily useful for drawing your pinholes. Um, yeah, and then with torchon lace, you'll typically be putting it in this little diamond pattern like this. Um, so with the second mode, we have line mode, and there's three steps to this. Um, you can, so first you plot the first point, and you see you have a blue point there. You plot your second point, and then a line fills in, and then you can click on this red point here to click and drag and get a nice quadratic curve. So this is especially useful for typically scalloped edges. And if you just want a line, you can click twice and then click away, and you'll just have your line. Finally, we have freehand draw mode. So if you just want to make markings on your pattern or do kind of a special design, you can do that. And if you hold shift in this mode, you can quickly draw straight lines. And notice how in the other two modes, the corners or the points, they snapped onto the grid lines, but here we're just freely drawing on the canvas. And so we can toggle snap to grid mode. So I click that there. And now we see that my points, I can place them anywhere as well as with my line. With any action that adds or removes objects, you can use your undo or redo feature. So I'm going to press Command Z or Control Z here, and you can see we're slowly stepping back through all of the actions I made. I can also press redo to go forwards in time. So yeah, there's always that option available. So let's go ahead and talk about how to work with these objects. Right now I'm in selection mode, which is probably the mode with the most functionality packed into it. Here you can click and drag in order to make a selection, and in order for an object to be included in your selection, it needs to be within the bounding box. You can click on objects individually to just select only that object, and you can also hold shift to add and remove objects from your selection. And you just do that by clicking on the object individually. So here we have our standard box selection, but if we want to have a little bit more control, we can go ahead and click into lasso mode. So here I click this and now I'm in lasso mode. So now I can draw a region around the object that I want to select, and it will select those objects. And with a selection, you can click and drag in order to move them. And if you have snap to grid enabled, it will snap back into the grid relative to where it was originally. So if I take this off, you can see I can move it however I want to. Let's go ahead and put that back. Okay, and so yeah, so also when you have a selection, the first thing you might want to do is use all of these cut and paste features or transformations, and in order to do that, we need to have a control point. And so that is a point here. Let me turn snap to grid back on. That is this blue point here. I get this by double tapping the screen. And whenever I do an action that requires a control point, it will perform the action relative to the control point. So to better explain that, so let's say I want to copy just this fan. I'm going to choose a point in order to place my control point, and then so let's say that is where my control point is. If I select this fan, and then I copy it, whenever I paste it, if I want to be sure about where it's located, I can double click my control point over here, and when I paste it, it will be pasted relative to that control point again. So I know exactly where I'm pasting it each time, and that way I kind of keep it on the grid. Of course, you can always just move it back onto the grid, but this way is a little bit more precise. So as we saw there, that is the copy and paste feature. Of course, we can always cut as well and paste. So here we have multiple objects pasted there. Let's see. And so for the transformations, again, these transformations are going to be performed relative to the control point. So here I have this control point here, and if I rotate this object 90 degrees clockwise, we see that it gets rotated there. So let me put that in a place that's not just a center point. So here, if I put the control point here and make the selection, let me include everything. Here, sometimes the bounding boxes are a little bit finicky, but you can always just shift click to fix your selection. So yeah, I have my control point down here, and when I rotate it, you can see now it's rotating relative to that position. We also have reflections. So here we have reflections vertically and horizontally. And that's just going to be, imagine like a vertical or horizontal line flowing through this control point. so you can make sense of it that way. So here, if I have my control point over here, it will reflect over this line if I click flip vertically. Finally, to get rid of objects, oh, I should also mention that any of these transformations, we can go ahead and undo and redo them. So undo and redo should be able to handle all object transformations that include adding, removing, and transformations. Yeah, so where was I? Finally, with a selection, we can go ahead and delete it. So we can do that by clicking this button, or we can do that by pressing backspace. So that's how we delete our selection. We can also use this eraser tool to go ahead and click on individual objects to delete them, or kind of move and drag our cursor around while holding down the click button to erase things that way. So now let's go ahead and talk about this top bar we have here. I'm going to start with exporting and importing. So here we can export our file and get a text representation of what we have. So if you want to store different patterns onto your machine, just copy and paste this text into a text file that you have. To import, whenever we have a fresh canvas, we can import our selection. So copy and paste this from your text file and import it, and you can see that we have our pattern here. For saving and loading, I don't really recommend this because it just saves it to your local storage, your browser's local storage. So if you clear your browser's memory, then you can lose this information. But it is convenient for when you're in the middle of a project and you want to close the browser or something and pull it back up a little bit later in a different session, you can do that. So yeah, saving it will overwrite whatever. You only have one save file in your local storage, and saving it will overwrite that. But once you have that, whenever you load, it will reappear. So also, if you're making changes and you're doing something to your canvas and you want to have like a checkpoint, you can always return to your checkpoint by having a little save state. Finally, we have our print feature. So for our print feature, we have a form that tells you what it needs. It needs the top left coordinates and the bottom right coordinates of the box for the print selection that we have. And it also wants the ratio of grid squares to inches. So that will give us the correct scaling. So for selecting the right selection, we can, if you notice here in our toolbar, we have a chip for displaying our current cursor position. We also, whenever we place a control point, it also shows us the coordinates of that control point. So here we see that if we want to select this little object here, we can do from 24.6 to 32.21. So I'm going to open my print box, 24.6 to 32.21. And for the scaling, I put a decent default scaling for number 30 crochet thread, but you can go ahead and print that out and see what it's like and change it however you want to. Or you can take a pattern that you're already happy with and measure out how many inches is your pattern and how many squares that would be, and kind of calculate it that way. Notice how in torchon lace, like there's always this grid pattern, so you can say on one row of holes, like this is going to be 2 grid squares, if that makes sense. But yeah, go ahead and play around with that. But anyways, when we have our form filled out, we can hit print. It will pop up a print dialog, and we can go ahead and do that. Make sure you print it at 100% scaling to get the proper ratio. And yeah, and also a little trick, if you want to make sure that you're printing at the right scale, go ahead and say, like, if I said 8 squares to 1 inches, plot in your print selection, plot a point every 8 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then let me use copy paste here. And so like you can just do this a few times, and when you print it out, you can put your ruler against this and make sure that from here to here is 3 inches and something like that. So yeah, and then finally in this top right corner we have an about page. I'll update this once I publish this video, but it'll give you a quick summary on how to use this tool, and also link to the blog post where you can get additional information about it. So I'm going to end this video by doing a quick little demonstration. I'm just going to film myself making a pattern and kind of narrating what I'm doing in the process. This is going to be unscripted. I mean, I didn't realize how hard it was to narrate a video, but anyways, it might be a little bit less together than the rest of the video, but that's all right. So yeah, I am going to be copying a pattern. This is a pattern from Lessons in Bobbin Lace Making by Dura Southard. Very good book. This is a pattern called Lacy Shell. And yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to start by drawing the torchon ground. Small little ground there. From here there starts a chevron, and also there's a sewing edge. I'm going to start by drawing the kind of sewing edge as a baseline. So that's going to be here, and yeah. So we have a chevron here that kind of goes in like this. So it goes in 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it should look like that. So this is half of the chevron, and I'm going to go ahead and use the reflect tool. So I'm going to make a selection here, choose this line here as my horizontal reflection. I forgot to, let's copy, paste, and then flip it. So here we see we have our cloth stitch chevron, and I can emphasize that it's cloth stitch by just kind of drawing in these pattern markings here. So I can just like kind of scribble it in there, or if you want to be a little bit more precise, you can hold shift, you can hold shift while doing this free drawing mode to draw straight lines. So yeah, let's fill in this ground right here. And so now we're ready to start the shell. This shell is very nice. It's a little bit more complex than what you'll usually find for these simples, kind of, what is it? You know, these simple kind of torchon laces. So yeah, it kind of radiates out from here, so let's do that. And then we can go ahead and mark our kind of scalloped edge using this tool, this kind of quadratic curve. In this pattern, there's actually kind of an extension. What I'm going to do is going to make sense in a second. Let me just plot some points here. We're going to want to go off grid, place them here, and I guess we can go back on grid for this here. And the outside of the shell actually extends out. This is the path the work group here. We're going to put one. Let me go off grid again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so here I'm just going to rearrange these so that they look nice, and then I'm going to reflect them afterwards. Okay, so they look decently nice and even. I'm going to copy it by grabbing this selection, flipping it over. I'm gonna, flipping it over, I'm going to, oh, there's something weird going on here. Okay, whatever. Here. So yeah, now I have these 8 points on the outside, and I can show you what's going on with these kind of points in the center here. It actually kind of goes in and out like that, and it goes all the way inside here. When you work this up, it looks very nice. This is one of my favorite fan patterns. And so yeah. And so here, this is the path of the worker pair, and in the pattern in the book, she also does this. She explicitly shows the kind of path the worker pairs take, which is nice for something that's slightly more complicated like this shell. So now you see these workers passing through here. And so I think that's actually everything for the repeat here. So let's go ahead and complete our pattern by doing some copy pasting. Let's get rid of this here since it kind of overlaps. So basically you'll choose a reference point. So here I want to kind of say like, oh, I know this chevron right here is going to be kind of pasted here. I can draw that out. So like there's like this chevron that's going to be here. So I'm going to choose this as my control point. So let me do that. I'm going to make my selection. Let me see if I can grab that. Okay, so I copy that, and I know I want my chevron to start at the bottom there, so I paste, and everything works out. I pasted it relative, like, so that's the benefit of having the kind of relative pasting to the control point. Keep everything on grid and nice and tidy. And so I'm going to extend that out for a little bit. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, there we go. So yeah, there's basically our pattern is done now. I think when I placed this, I wasn't exactly on grid, so there is a little bit of an overlap there. You can clean it up. You can like do it right from the beginning, or clean it up, or even just leave it. It doesn't really matter too much. And then finally, I'm going to draw in my complete sewing edge. Oops. There we go. Here we are. We have our final final pattern, and so we'll finish it off by printing it out. So I'm going to find the coordinates that I need. I'm going to say top left corner is 18. Let's do 15, negative 37 to 37, 23. So 15, negative 37. 15, negative 37 to 37, 23. Hopefully I got that right. I'm just going to choose a default ratio since I'm not actually working this out. And we see we have a very nice pattern right there. Let me open the window for it. So yeah,